Hello everyone, this is Muhammad Imran. You're watching and learning linguistics and literature with Imran. Today we are with another lecture in the subject History of English Literature. The focus of today's lecture is literature of Anglo-Saxon time. Let's begin our today's lecture. Literature of the time. So we're talking about Anglo-Saxon time or Anglo-Saxon period, which begins in 449 and ends in 1066. So in the middle of 5th century, Anglo-Saxon era begins, and in the middle of 11th century, Anglo-Saxon period ends. Right? So people are reading and listening to. What are people reading and listening to? They are listening and reading to songs and poems. Few people of the time could read. So those people who couldn't read, they are listening to songs then. But they love to listen to songs because most of the people in that age or in that period, they couldn't read or write. Right? Most of the people were illiterate. So they love to listen to songs, stories, poems, sermons, and religious plays. Traveling minstrels and members of the clergy created a great body of oral literature in order to entertain and to teach. Right? So there were dual purpose of such songs and story. First, they wanted to entertain the people, and second, they wanted to teach the people, right? Some moral lessons. So we can say that there were great moral lessons, right, in their songs and in their stories and poems, poetry and sermons. Stained glass windows. The beautifully crafted stained glass windows of the cathedral were more than decoration, right? So the purpose was not just decoration, but the purpose was more than decoration. What was the purpose? They presented Bible stories on stained glass windows and moral lesson to educate and inspire those who could not read written language. So I told you that most of the people of the time, they couldn't write and read. So those who could read, so they would read on stained glass, such kind of stories from Bible. But who could appreciate pictures, right? And those who could appreciate pictures and then so these pictures were for those that who couldn't write. So then these people would appreciate the pictures because the pictures would be or the stories would be like in the form of pictures. So each picture would narrate a story. People would look at the pictures and then they would say, okay, that what is happening like in these pictures, or what is the story. So the stories would be taken from the Bible, and these stories would be like presented in the form of pictures on stained glass windows, right? Theology. School of theology, the study of religion, spread across Europe. So we are talking about Christianity, along with an interest in reason and Greek philosophy. So Greek philosophy, reason, and Christianity spread across Europe. One of the great religious philosophers, Thomas Aquinas, 1225 and 1274, aimed to reconcile faith with reason, right? So he wanted to reconcile faith with reasons and to describe the nature and destiny of Christian humanity, right? So he was discussing or he was mingling faith with reason. People are writing. So what are people writing? The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle was compiled in Old English. So we have Old English, we have Middle English, and we have Modern English, and served as year by year diary of important world events. So what is in like Anglo-Saxon Chronicle? So there were some important world events. Some year of English history were extensively recorded while others were left incomplete or blank. although authors did not begin compiling the date until 892. Recorded events begin in the year first with the birth of Christ. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle was updated until the 12th century. So you have to remember that what was inside the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. So there were some important historical events. So some of the historical events were well written while some were left blank, right? So riddles. Telling riddles was a common form of intellectual stimulations, right? So people would tell riddles, right? What we call in Urdu like paheli. And it was considered intellectual simultaneous, right? Now, for the English and in the Middle Ages, the riddle recorded here describe ice, right? So this is a riddle, okay? Commonly these people would read such kind of riddle. The wave over the wave, and a weird thing I saw. Now, through wrought and wonderfully ornate, and a wonder on the wave, water became born. So such kind of riddle would be narrated by the people of Anglo-Saxon time. Language of the time. So what kind of language or what kind of English was spoken when Anglo-Saxons were ruling over England? So how people speak English becomes a language that time in Anglo-Saxon time. So language changes constantly, and we know this, okay, that how language was spoken 10 or 20 years ago is not spoken the way today. So some of the expressions used today did not exist 10 years ago, right? So we are living in technological advanced time. So 10 years or 20 years ago, most of the expressions were not used and we are using today. So in Anglo-Saxon time, we had Old English. So those words and those expressions did not use in Middle Ages. And the expressions and the words which were used in Middle Ages were not used in Shakespearean time. And the expressions and language, how it was spoken in Shakespearean time, is not spoken today. So imagine then how the English language changed between 450 and 1500. So if 1500, that is Middle Age, right? On its way to becoming modern English, because in 1600 we see that English became a modern English. So the language went through two major stages, Old English and Middle English. And after 1500 we see that there will be modern English. Old English about 450 and 1150. So between 450 and 1150 in England, Old English was spoken. Old English had two primary sources. The language of the Celtic people who were living before the invasion of Anglo-Saxon, right? So Celtic people were living on the land of England before the arrival of Anglo-Saxon people, right? And the language of invading Germanic tribes. And when Germanic tribes like Anglo-Saxon people, when they invaded on England. So these are the two sources of Old English, right? So Germanic tribes, Anglo-Saxon people, and Celtic people, right? Who were living before the invasion of Germanic tribes, right? On this slide, we will discuss who contributed Old English. First, Germanic contributed by Anglo-Saxon tribes. So there is Germanic contribution, and this Germanic contribution is done by Anglo-Saxon tribes. So contributed in 450, these Germanic tribes contributed many basic words. For example, preposition to, conjunction and, for, in, man, wife, and child, fight, love, drink, and similarly sleep, eat, house, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and so many more. So here we are just focusing on some basic words which are the contribution of Anglo-Saxon tribes, right? And they were Germanic tribes. Fine. Now come towards Latin contributed by Christian missionaries. We can see the contribution of Christian missionaries, and that is Latin contribution. That is between 600. Now, for example, we have a word that is altar. We have a word monk and preach and school and angle and anthem and noon. Similarly, rule, candle, offer, and human and priest. Right? Sorry, that is ham and priest. So these words are the contribution by Christian missionary. Okay, and that is called Latin contribution. Germanic contribution, right, by Anglo-Saxon. Latin contribution by Christian missionary. And then all Norse added by Vikings when there is the invasion of Anglo-Norman, right? So this Norse contribution, Viking, who were like also tribes who came from north. And we can see that this is between 787 till 1000. So we have some words, for example, left, take, give, husband, sky, trust, dirt, skull, and crawl and clasp. Now we come towards French contributed by Norman conquerors. So what is the contribution of Norman conquerors, right? Who came from Normandy, from France, right? So there is also French contribution, and this French contribution is done by Norman conquerors. William Duke, you might have heard the name, who would take on England in 1066. So they added 10,000 words, most still in use. For example, action, adventure, marriage, power, vision, rage, able, cruel, horrible, honest, join, arrive, move, observe, prefer, and trip. So this is French contribution that is done by Norman conquerors. So on this slide we discuss in detail that who contributed all English. First we talk about Germanic contribution, and that is done by Anglo-Saxon tribes because they were Germanic tribes, and this is their contribution. Then we talk about Latin contribution that is done by Christian missionaries, and then we talk about Old Norse contribution that is done by Viking who attacked on England, and then we talk about French contribution that is done by Norman conquerors. And most of these words are also they are still the part of English language, because still we use to, and, for, in, man, wife, child, fight. Still we use these words. Still we use these words like altars, monk, preach, school, etc. And still we use like these words like live, take, give. And still we use these words like actions and adventure. So these words are taken, right? Or these words are contributed by different people, different tribes, right? So with this slide we will conclude our today's lecture. Roughly half of all modern English words are of Germanic origin. So you can see the contribution of Germanic tribes, Anglo-Saxon tribes. Almost half of all modern English, they are contributed by Germanic tribes, Anglo-Saxon tribes, including words for most basic concept, all auxiliary verbs and many common verbs and adjectives. Who contributed? Anglo-Saxon tribes, or this is Germanic origin. Almost half of modern English vocabulary comes from Latin or French, including many legal, political, and culinary terms. French was the language of the upper classes. No king of England spoke English as his native language between 1066 and 1399. So that was all about, right, the literature of the time, or the literature of Anglo-Saxon time. we discuss in detail that how Old English was contributed by different tribes. So thank you so much. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the channel. And please provide your valuable feedback and comments. Thank you so much.